Hey everybody, this is Andy from Tennis Euphoria, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Dunlop CX 200 Tour, both the 16x19 and the 18x20 versions. In terms of tech, let's see what Dunlop say. Okay, so these rackets are then all about control and controllable power, and of course looking at the specs. Comfort. Just a note on specs, these rackets are ultimately very similar. Both 95 square inch heads, both have the same thin beam width, 20.5. They have slightly different balance points, probably because the 18x20 comes with a leather grip and the 16x19 comes with a synthetic grip. Apart from that, really the only main difference is the string pattern. With initial hits, these do have a very soft and controllable feel. They're not a power racket. You do need to be able to generate your own power, but they're really nice to hit with, and I found that because you get great feel and connection to the ball, and you also feel like you can hit your spots, it makes you play quite creatively. It makes you want to hit your targets, come to the net, play the odd drop shot, etc. And I think you probably need to be someone who enjoys those aspects of a full and varied game in order to get the most out of these rackets. So a note on comparing the old black versions to the new red versions. This is at best a very subtle update. I honestly couldn't tell any difference in playability of the rackets. And I made sure that I strung them up with the same strings. I was using Solinco Tourbite Soft initially, and then I started playing around with different strings to arrive at what I felt was a good setup that I could give you maybe some hints on that might work well if this is a racket that you're thinking about. Initially in this clip with the slinger, I was starting with the black version, the 18x20. As you can see, the transition into the black version 16x19 is pretty seamless. You get a bit more spin. I've found that you can probably hit slightly more effective angles with the 16x19. Then moving over to the new red versions, I have to be honest in that the rackets felt pretty much exactly the same. Clearly the red rackets were newer, they'd had less time in stringing machines and less time hitting balls, and you could possibly sort of notice that, but I don't think there was any fundamental difference with the technologies or how these rackets really play. What I would say is that I was starting to develop a preference towards the 16x19. So how do the rackets perform? As I said, those sort of first impressions hits remained throughout the time that I was playing with them. You do, if you can generate your own pace and have solid technique, take quite a lot of confidence from these rackets. You kind of just know that where you want the ball to go, if you're effective with your technique, the ball will go there. What I did think was that the 95 square inch head delivers great control, but it also delivers a sweet spot which is quite pleasantly surprising. A little bit like the Prince 93P, the shape of the head is quite circular, and this makes the sweet spot quite generous. You could at times be forgiven for thinking that you were playing with a slightly bigger head size, maybe a 97, and this I think was a really positive thing. That isn't necessarily felt with power, but certainly with regards to size of the sweet spot comparably to other rackets and maintaining control, I thought that was really positive. What I was finding in point play is that from the baseline, I personally felt the 16x19 was more effective, but that's purely because of the launch angle in the string pattern, so you get a little bit more natural leeway over the net, which just helps out with consistency for me, and also gives you a bit more natural depth on your shots, and I thought that was pretty valuable, so I was certainly gravitated towards that. I would have liked some more plough through and a little bit more stability at net, and I was finding that with the 18x20 it was, for advanced opponents, pretty easy for them to get on top of my game, and I was occasionally hitting into the net. The launch angle with the 18x20 is pretty low, so I needed a bit of extra insurance, but I felt that I could improve the 16x19, so I started to use my old black version to experiment, and I used a variety of strings. I looked at some shaped edged polys to really see if I could improve the spin, but I ended up coming back to some of my old favourites, and Head Links Tour I found to be particularly effective in the racket. I think that a hybrid setup could work pretty well, particularly from a bit more power perspective, to maybe get a synthetic gut or a natural gut in the crosses could work particularly well. What I found was that by adding a leather grip to the 16x19, that took the weight up a little bit, and then I added some lead across 12, 10 and 2. Not a lot, 6 grams in total, but I found that to be a hugely effective setup in this racket. The leather grip is more of a personal thing. I'm just used to leather grips and like to have a leather grip and an overgrip, so there's an aspect of familiarity, but that of course adds a little bit of weight, and with the extra 6 grams across the top of the hoop you are improving stability and plough through, which I think is a big improvement on this racket. So certainly for me in my game, and I would certainly encourage users or people considering this racket to consider the 16x19 and make those adjustments to really improve it. That made me realise that with this 16x19 I actually think it has a unique space in the market. Of course, control rackets, 18x20 string patterns, there's a lot of competition, and I think that the CX 200 Tour 18x20 does fall a little bit short next to a certain Yonex racket, and also of course to the Head Prestige offerings, both the 360 plus MP as it was, now the Pro. However, with this 16x19 it's harder to get hold of a 16x19 sort of advanced but basic quality racket unless you look at the Wilson Ultra Pro 16x19, which is hugely expensive, and this plays very similar. So that would be my advice. Check it out, it works really well in that space. Hope this was helpful. Give it a like if so, and see you in the next one.